Well, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. Thanks for logging on to my latest long-range forecast update. Absolutely gorgeous skies out there, folks. Really just can't beat this weather. We're hanging out at we're at 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time here. We're already into the low 80s across most of the area, and really mid 80s are about what we can find today. Hard pressed to find some clouds in the sky today. Get a visual satellite on here, and you can see, well, there's some out to our west, but pretty much a mostly sunny sky for us otherwise, and really you just can't beat this weather. It's absolutely beautiful. In fact, this beautiful weather is going to stay for a few days, and that's because high pressure is going to be pretty much large and in charge. Just kind of taking a look at the model. Next transfer rain really doesn't move in until Tuesday. So once I put this into motion, you can see high pressure just sort of sticks around large and in charge over the area. And maybe there's a couple of systems up to our north that you can see sort of skirt by up to our north, but nothing really too much to worry about from there. Next better chance of rain, though, comes in on Tuesday, and we do get a couple of chances of rain next week, but then we start to dry out again, and really as we go through the extended period, we have a couple of chances of rain, but we have a lot of drier weather with it. We're starting to get into a little bit of a drier pattern, and of course that's a good thing. We'll end up taking that. Part of the reason why is because the tropics just aren't as active as they were a couple of weeks ago, and the tropics were just absolutely cooking. And you remember some of these updates I've showed you in the past. We had 5 or 6 storms out in the Pacific Ocean at once brewing. We've only got a couple out there right now, and so when we don't have as many storms out there, there's not as much energy to be fed into our portion of the world, and of course that leads to a little bit of a drier pattern. It's basically what we got going on right now. There are a couple of things out there. Here's a tropical storm. In fact, the models take that over onto the coast of Africa. That might lead to a slight warm up later on down the month, rather than recurving past Japan and going up. When these tropical storms hit mainland China, they usually lead to a little bit of a warm up for us. So that's something we'll be looking out for, but it doesn't look like it's going to affect us too much at this point. Only other one that we've got really going on right now is Hurricane Guillermo, and it looks like it very well could hit Hawaii. It does look like it will weaken before it gets there, and of course that's a good thing. We'll hope and pray for that, because Hawaii certainly does not need a hurricane to hit them. But if you got friends and relatives there, that's going to be something that they may end up facing, so keep that in mind. But other than that, we don't have a whole lot of activity going on out in the Pacific Basin. A little bit going on in the Atlantic, but nothing too much to get excited over yet. Bottom line, we've got pretty much a slow kind of a pattern going on right now. Hey, we'll take it with all the rain that we've had. Now, temperature-wise, we've got a couple of hot days to go with, but as you look through at the GFS ensembles, once a major cold front moves through next week, we've got a nice cool down, and so we're going to warm back up to the mid to upper 80s, even maybe hit a 90 or two here and there. But once that cold front comes through, it look like 85 to 82 going to be sort of the norm as we head later on into August. Of course, that will be a very welcome break. 88 is about where we should be this time of the year for our normal high temperature. So, you know, where we're going to be at the next couple of days, pretty well just about normal, but we'll go into a little bit of a below normal pattern there then, but no one will complain about that. Temperatures in the low 80s for the beginning of August. That is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Now, all right, let's take a turn here, folks, and I want to talk for a little bit here about what we could expect more into the long range. I said the last long range update I was going to do this. I've been wanting to do this for a couple of videos now and haven't had a chance to do it, but I want to do this today, folks. I want to talk to you about more of the longer range pattern, and specifically what could we be looking at over the next several months and even into this winter, because I know that's always something that's on your mind. So let me just say at this point right now, it's way too far out to give anything definite for this winter, but I'm going to show you what the models are showing now and give you a little bit of an idea of why we're thinking that way, but certainly not a final forecast by any means. First, let's look at the El Nino index, and you've probably heard about El Nino, and we're getting a pretty strong one. There, the index, anything over zero point 0.5 for 3 consecutive months is considered an El Nino. We've been in El Nino for a little while here. In fact, we are already really above a 1.5 right now. We're more look like 1.6, 1.7 on the index right about now, and it's only going to continue to strengthen. The dashed line here is your average of all of the models that are used to forecast the El Nino, and you can see it really peaks up here maybe about November, between October and November of this year, before it starts to fall off over the wintertime a little bit. So that's something that we'll be keeping an eye out for. Very strong El Nino. Of course, El Ninos do affect us greatly. Here's what an El Nino looks like, and you can see this warm waters right over here off the coast of South America and then stretching over into the Pacific Ocean. El Nino is an unusual warming of these waters, and of course it turns the direction of the wind in the Pacific Ocean. That makes less activity out here for us hurricane and tropical storm-wise in the Atlantic. It really cooks the Pacific. That's what you see going on, and that makes this a very active season out here. And of course El Nino has an effect on us. Under a typical El Nino winter, if it were to be a typical, here's what we would normally see. The southern persistent extended Pacific jet stream, the southern branch of the jet stream, it amplifies the storm track, but it keeps the storms more to our south, and it stays kind of cool and wet down there. It usually makes us a little bit drier here in the Ohio Valley and kind of on the border of a warmer than normal sort of situation for us as the polar jet stream stays up to the north. That's what a typical El Nino winter looks like. The only problem is that under a typical El Nino winter, you get a persistent low pressure up here in the Gulf of Alaska, cooler than normal waters, and what you're going to see right now is we do not have that at all. We have cooking waters up here. We have had for the past couple of years, this is what we call a strongly positive PDO. There's a wrench into the forecast because this strongly positive PDO, folks, has been in large part what has caused some of the pretty brutal winters that we have seen in the eastern United States. It was largely responsible for the winter outbreaks that we saw, of course, last February. Remember back to February, it was a pretty rough time for us. Now, December and January were not that bad at all, but February was pretty rough. And of course, you remember Boston and Buffalo and some other places just got record-breaking snowfall, all largely responsible because of that warm PDO. So the question is, well, how does that interact? If this is a normal El Nino pattern, what does that do? Well, it's not going to be a completely normal El Nino pattern. Well, first off, let's talk a little bit just briefly here about the outlooks. Here's what the National Weather Service has at the moment for their temperature outlook for the winter. And so this would be the valid DJF 2015. This is December, January, February. December 2015, January, February 2016. So they're predicting a cooler than normal winter down to the south, above normal winter out into the west and to our north, and then the EC is equal chances, and we're kind of right on the border between the two. Go back to a typical El Nino winter. Isn't that pretty much about what you see what a typical El Nino winter is? Precipitation-wise, bullseye of below normal precipitation right over us, above normal down to our south. Again, that's pretty much what you see under a typical El Nino winter. Now, will that verify or not? Well, we're really going to have to see. Right now, I think it's a pretty good guess, but it is 6 months away from what we would expect the start of winter to be, really, in December. So, 5 months or so about, and we're just going to have to see. They've been wrong on their forecast the past couple of winters, so keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and look at a couple of things, though. Let's talk about that PDO, the warm phase of the PDO, because this is what I'm talking about right now. This warm water, this positive Pacific decadal oscillation, the PDO. That's really jacked our weather up the past couple of years. In fact, as you look at this, here's PDO index. The red is the warm phase. The cool is the cool phase. It goes back and forth in this. We've entered a strongly warm phase. We started to enter that warm phase about the beginning of 2014. So really the winter of 2013 and 14, and then what we're going to experience this winter. The winter of 14 and 15 was, and it's going to stay. The winter of 15-16 looks to stay in a strongly positive PDO. Now I got a pretty strong El Nino event too. Remember the 1997-98 El Nino, and it really brought some pretty bad effects to our area. But notice that we had a pretty strongly positive PDO back then. So we've got something to at least partially correlate this to. Let's go back to that. Let's talk about the winter of 97-98, because right now that looks like to be the nearest analogy that we could make to this winter, at least at this point out, from the way things look. Let's talk about it. Let's look at the climatological data. So this is from NOAA. This is the actual climate data from the Evansville Regional Airport. And well, did we just see warmer than normal temperatures and below normal precipitation, like what we would normally see? And what did we see about snowfall? Let's look. December 1997, departures from normal. It was actually a 0.2 of a degree cooler than normal for our temperature span. So not too bad, near normal for that. But we were 1.33 inches below normal, though, on total rainfall. Rainfall includes the snow that's melted. But did we get no snow? Absolutely not. Look at this. We got 6.6 inches of snow in December of 1997. So it doesn't mean that we will have a snowless winter by any means. We had a trace. There's a 2.5. trace, a 3.2, and a trace. So you can see we had a couple of reasonably snowy days, and it led to 6.6 inches of snow for the month. Go back to January then of 1998. What was the difference here? Well, we were 9.4 degrees above normal temperature-wise. It was a very warm January. In fact, we were almost a half inch below normal on precipitation. That's starting to look like a typical El Nino pattern. Does this mean that we won't get any snowfall? Well, we had 7/10 of an inch of snowfall. January 98 turned out to be a very warm month, not much snowfall with it. And take a look at this. Your average temperatures, just look at your maximum temperatures, range from the 40s, 50s, almost 70 degrees there on the 4th of January. Can you believe that? And the lowest high temperature I can find here is 33, so that's really not that bad. Minimum temperatures, about the lowest I can really see here is 11 degrees. But on average, though, the minimum 40 in the 50s, low 30s, some into the 20s. It wasn't really that bad of a January. That's why I say it was 9.4 degrees above normal. What happened in February, though, was a complete switch, though. February 1998, look at this. We were still 7.7 degrees above normal, still almost a half inch below normal. But look at this. Can you still get snowfall underneath of that? Absolutely. We got 12.2 inches of snowfall in February 1998. Point by showing you this is to say, look, even if we get an above normal winter temperature-wise, even if we get a below normal winter precipitation-wise, we can still get big snows totally not. So I wouldn't say for you snow lovers out there that it's going to be a completely snowless winter. That's not the case at all. We got several snowfalls out of this. And look at this. On the 4th and 5th of February 1998, 5.7 inches one day, 4.3 the next day, 2.2 the next day. So we got some pretty heavy snows 3 days in a row right there. But then it stayed pretty snowless for a long time. In fact, all through the rest of the month. That was the only 3 days worth of snow that we saw. Yeah, we were 7.7 degrees above normal, but we did see some snow that month. In fact, we saw 12.2 inches of snow for that. So keep in mind, though, even though we have these, even though we might be in above normal temperature-wise winter, we could still get some big snows out of it. It's certainly possible. I don't have March of 98 pulled up here, but if you add the 1.1 inches of snow we received there, we actually got 20.6 inches of snow at the Evansville Regional Airport there in the winter of 97-98 from that El Nino. So all that to say, even though we were certainly above normal temperature-wise and we were below normal a little bit in the precipitation department, we did have several big snow events that really added up. And that 5.7, you added 4.3, you added 6.2, that made up your 12.2 inches. Of course, that was all on the ground at one time, so that was a pretty big snow. It fell over 3 days, so it might compact a little bit, but you had 8, 9, 10 inches of snow on the ground at one time, and so that's a pretty significant snow event. It was warm otherwise. Look at this. Temperatures in the upper 50s. We stayed in the low 30s, but then you went right back up to the 50s and even some 60s, almost 70 by the time you ended February. So, if it looks like, if folks, let me just put it this way. At this point, if you're saying, well, are you fearful, Michael, that we're going to receive another winter like we had a couple of years ago where it's going to be brutal cold all winter long? I'm not. I don't think it's going to be that at all. The way it looks to me like right now, we may be above normal in the temperature department overall. We may be below normal in the precipitation department overall. That's what our closest analog is really pointing to at this point. But don't count the snow department out, because we can still get some big snowstorms out of that, as you can see. So I don't know. It might be the best of both worlds for both people. Models, as far as this goes, the best model that we've got out there to predict this, that's done well the past couple of years, has by far been the JAMSTEC model. It's from the Japan Meteorological Agency. Here's what they're predicted: December, January, February, sea surface temperatures, very strong El Nino going on here. Still very warm waters over the Gulf of Alaska. What does it correlate to? Look at this, though. Here's your precipitation, and you can see drier than normal right over us. Temperature-wise, warmer than normal right over us, cooler into the south of us. So that's a very typical El Nino winter, and that's kind of what it's predicting at this point. We'll see whether that holds out to be true. It's early. It's only July 31st when I'm saying this. My official forecast won't come out until the end of October, very beginning of November. But as of right now, it really doesn't look like a bad winter going on. I still think that we could get some pretty big snows out of it, but it looks like we may be warmer and less and drier than what we would see overall. That's kind of what my leanings to is on this point in time. It's early. We'll see. It's not the final forecast. We'll issue that a little later on in the year. But for those of you that have been asking me about winter, and there have been a few of you, there you go. All right, in the short term again, southernindianaweather.com. We got some very pleasant days coming up, folks. A mid 80s for your temperatures. It warms up a little bit for the weekend, but the next chances of rain moves in Tuesday and Wednesday. They're not huge chances by any means, but you see nothing extreme. And once the cold front moves through, not bad, folks. So get out and enjoy this weather. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite for southernindianaweather.com. Have a great day, folks. And we'll see you next time.